Jai Baba. None dies and none knows to die. The rare one who knows to die is never born again. Meher Baba. Avatar Meher Baba ki Jai. Thanks to beloved Baba and Jai Baba to all of you. We are reading session number 17 and perhaps the last session in the series of Meher Baba on death. We are reading from Listen Humanity, page number 108.
The infinite poise of consciousness in realization should not be confused with the semblance of sanskaric equilibration that is approached by the limited ego mind in discarnate life in the hell or heaven state. Such ineffable poise is unapproachable by the full consciousness in man as long as it remains clouded by the slightest traces of the limiting ego mind.
Okay, we have seen in the earlier sessions that real death is the death of the limitation, death of the mind, death of the separation, and we should all aim at, we should all strive for that death, where we never are born again. And the name of this game is to come to an equal balance of sanskaras, quantitatively and qualitatively. Then it's all over. They cancel each other. And Baba says that in the state of heaven or hell, which are acute mental experiences, not locales or place, it comes to a near balance, but it is never balanced. It always tilts on one side and then you take a rebirth. So here Baba says, the infinite poise of consciousness in realization. In God realization, there is absolute poise, there are no samskaras. Should not be confused with the semblance of sanskaric equilibration. Yani it is a semblance, it is as if, but it's not the real. That is approached by the limited ego mind in discarnate life without the body, in the hell or heaven state. Such ineffable poise, which means indescribable poise, is unapproachable by the full consciousness in man as long as it remains clouded by the slightest traces of the limited ego mind. In short, what Baba is trying to say, that in an incarnate life, it is well nigh impossible to come to the exact poise or exact equilibrium of samskaras, so-called good and bad. So, qualitatively and quantitatively, it is not possible.
At the time of taking on a new physical body, the good and the bad sanskaras of the individual are almost in balance. However, there is always a slight ascendance at this time of either the good or bad sanskaras. They are never in perfect balance, nor do they in any manner overlap or cancel one another. Complete poise can exist only when the two opposite classes of sanskaras are so qualitatively and quantitatively opposed that they exactly cancel one another.
Now, if you read our earlier sessions, I don't want to repeat them. As I said, that there is, at the time of death, there is always a preponderance of one type of samskaras, either the so-called good or so-called bad. And as we experience the state of heaven or hell, we are reducing, utilizing, expanding, spending those samskaras, as a result of which we come to a near balance, but it is never balanced. Sometimes, it is at this level, or sometimes it flips on to the other level. So Baba says, at the time of taking on a new physical body, the good and the bad samskaras of the individuals are almost in balance, because that is the time when you take another birth. Every birth is an opportunity to balance, and every death again is an opportunity to experience all that you have experienced in the incarnate form and try to learn from it and get going. However, there is always a slight ascendance, that would mean dominance, one is heavier, at this time of either the good or bad samskaras. They are never in perfect balance, nor do they in any manner overlap or cancel one another. It does not overlap or cancel one another. Complete poise can exist only when the two opposite classes of samskaras are so qualitatively and quantitatively opposed that they cancel one another, exactly cancel one another. That's never a case. It has, according to me, never happens unless and until there is an active help and participation of a living perfect master in our life, or the avatar who's the eternal living perfect master.
When opposite sanskaras are not only equal in strength, but are also in exact qualitative opposition, they cancel each other and can no longer act as semi-automatic subjective propelling forces, but are transmuted into consummate understanding that is free from opposing reactions to life. This is the state of liberation.
So here Baba says, the state of liberation is when qualitatively and quantitatively they cancel each other. There is no predominance of one against the other. Here Baba says, when opposite samskaras are not only equal in strength, but are also in exact qualitative opposition, they cancel each other and can no longer act as semi-automatic subjective propelling forces. In other words, what propels us to wake up in the morning? The samskaras. What propels us to take this action or that action? The samskaras. Samskaras are nothing but habit patterns, tendencies, that we do it. So these are all, in spite of the fact that we decide to do a certain thing, we end up doing something else. So what is propelling? So Baba says, when there is no semi-automatic subjective propelling forces, but are transmuted. Transmuted would mean changed in the nature and in the form. Transmuted into consummate understanding. That means perfect in details, in every details understanding that is free from that is free from opposing reactions to life. This is the state of liberation, which is again, later on Baba says that is not easily possible with human effort. The grace of the master is always required.
The seeming balance that is approximated by the individual before each birth may be compared to a tug of war in which opposite forces are active, although neither may predominate. The matching of forces then has only to be slightly disturbed, and the entire situation becomes subject to change. In the same manner, the pseudo-poise of sanskaras present at the time of birth has only to be slightly disturbed in order to imprint the sanskaric pattern for the individual life.
A very superb example, Baba says, that if there are two teams playing tug of war, and both are equally strong, there is no preponderance, there is a state of static, there is no movement. So it may appear as if that they have cancelled each other. But this is just a pseudo balance. It is not actually. The moment you slightly change something, say add one person to another team, or as we used to do in school days, tickle somebody. So when you tickle, you do this, that means that team will be a little less strong and the other team will pull you up. So Baba says, gives an example that the seeming balance, it is seeming, it's not real balance, that is approximated by the individual before each birth. That means before each birth, there is a seeming balance of samskaras, may be compared to a tug of war in which opposite forces are active. Although neither may predominate, the matching of forces then has only to be slightly disturbed and the entire situation becomes subject to change. In the same manner, the pseudo-poise, pseudo not genuine, fake,
False.
make-believe, false. The pseudo-poise of sanskaras present at the time of birth has only to be slightly disturbed in order to imprint the sanskaric pattern for the individual life. That means slight change in that pattern. It could be anything. It could be, I don't know, I'm just assuming that mummy, shouting at the child, or whatever, come on, have milk, or that any change, that pseudo-poise will be disturbed, and the entire sanskaric pattern would be downloaded on the consciousness, and then you start the swinging immediately.
In the state of realization, the opposite types of sanskaras interpenetrate each other in such a manner that they cease to exist as opposing forces. The resultant is not a state of sanskaric tension, but a state of complete internal neutralization in which the sanskaras have ceased to exist as propulsive elements. This is not a mere state of exact mathematical equalization of opposites, but a state beyond the opposites, of true poise, rooted in unbroken consciousness of infinite unity.
So now here Baba says, in the state of realization, God realization, where we say that there are no samskaras. When we say no samskaras, Baba is explaining that each type of samskara so interpenetrate each other that they equalize and balance, balance each other in such a manner that there are no samskaras. That is the state of realization. In the state of realization, the opposite types of samskaras interpenetrate each other in such a manner then they cease to exist as opposing forces. The resultant is not a state of sanskaric tension, but a state of complete internal neutralization in which the samskars have ceased to exist as propulsive element. Propulsive is something which is propelling, driving, pushing, because the samskaras are the one which are always propelling us. So in a state of realization, self-realization, God realization, they cease to be the propelling force.
This is not a state of mere.
Oh, I'm sorry. This is not a mere state of exact mathematical equalization of opposites, but a state beyond the opposite, of true poise rooted in unbroken consciousness of infinite unity. So what is the consciousness? The consciousness of a realized soul is of infinite unity. There is only one, and that is me. That he is one with each and every one and each and everything.
During the entire long period preceding realization, the mind acts in each single circumstance according to the dictates of the preponderant sanskaras. As in a tug of war, there is movement in the direction of the greater pull, but that motion represents only a small proportion of the total energy spent, for most of it was used up in the opposition of forces.
Now, unless you read the earlier sessions, it would maybe a little difficult to grasp. Here what Baba is saying, that in a play of tug of war, it's tight, as we said, but supposing after a certain while it drags on in one direction. So that is not the totality of the force, because it is being counterbalanced by the other force. So that is not a totality. Here Baba says, see now I will read this, what Baba is trying to convey. During the entire long period preceding realization, that means what we are going through right now, preceding realization, the mind acts in each single circumstance according to the dictates of the preponderant samskaras. The samskaras influence the mind thinks, the so-called heart feels, and then the body puts it into action. So we are all governed by the samskaras. Samskaras are the supreme, the chairman. As in a tug of war. Tug of war, what happens? There is movement in the direction of the greater pull. When there's a greater pull. But that motion represents only a small portion of the total energy spent, for most of it was used up in the opposition of forces. That means that you are putting, let us say, 100 pressure, right? But you are moving only 5 because 95 was balanced on the other side. You see? So that is not the complete, where Baba says here, but that motion represents only a small portion of the total, small proportion of the total energy spent, for most of it was used up in the opposition of forces. So here what Baba is trying to explain to us is the play of the samskaras, the so-called good samskaras and the bad samskaras, how they play up in our life.
In realization, there is an entire disappearance or cancellation of the sanskaras, such as would occur in a tug of war when the opposing parties finished the game and stopped pulling in opposite directions.
So there is no now pull in any direction. Once you finish the game, you just put down the rope and you are okay. So in the same way, in realization, there is no such tug of war, there is no nothing, it's all over, it's all finished. The game is over.
On the other hand, in near equalization of sanskaric tension, there is only a temporary arrest of express activity. Then, when some new or outside factor upsets this equilibrium, reactions occur which show that the situation had been quite not because of lack of propelling forces, but rather because they had temporarily cancelled one another. There's an asterisk. This analysis has the greatest possible practical significance in considering the adjustment of the individual to his environment. It often happens that balancing forces in environment tend to bring a very difficult personal situation into temporary equilibrium. At this point, the individual tends to regard the situation as solved because he is no longer aware of any intense localized pressure. However, eventually, those balancing forces will shift, and once more, the situation will seem to fly out of control. This is usually very discouraging because the sequence may be repeated several times without apparent improvement. The individual then often asks himself why he should continue to try, as he never seems to find a lasting solution to his problems. But the poise originally established was due only to a happy combination of forces, sanskaras, that almost cancelled each other. Final release comes as the basic motivating forces are dissolved and resorbed in the process of ultimate realization. This may seem a discouragingly remote solution to the pressing problem of the moment, but in such a final solution, the answer is complete and the poise absolute, because the forces themselves have been annihilated and lost.
Now, this is a little deep in the sense we are creatures with internal forces, which are our thoughts and samskaras, and external forces, which is the environment, the situations, the happenings, the events, the occurrences that happen. And that puts us in imbalance. So I'll just, in a nutshell, I'm just trying to explain. There is a possibility. Now, for example, I am in Dubai, but I'm fed up. I don't like that life. I'm just saying it. Don't feel otherwise. So I want to go and settle down in India. So when I come to India, so that means the environment has changed. Over there, just example, don't take it personal. Over there, I used to get in a fit, and I used to get angry, and I used to get, unhappy about certain situations. But now that I have changed the environment, there is an apparent pseudo poise So now you feel that you are much settled down. But sometimes, something triggers, and that trigger again brings out what is there inside of you, and you feel that I have been trying not to get angry, or I have been trying not to be discouraged, or I have been trying not to be lusty, or I have been trying not to be greedy, But it just keeps changing. Now I am practicing, let's say, as somebody said yesterday, I have reduced my portion of eating. So that way I have become a little thin. I have not become, somebody said this. So it's very fine. There is a semblance of poise. But sometimes, you go to a party, you meet some friends and tell friends, what are you doing? After all, life is meant to be enjoyed. What nonsense you are doing, I have stopped drinking. There's a joke. I said, what do you mean you stopped drinking? No, I am not drinking anymore. I said, why? No, I want to live a long life. I said, all your friends are drinking. You are not drinking. Now we will all go off by say 55, 60, 65. You alone will live for 70, 75 years. There are no friends to take care of you, to talk to you. And when you will die, who will lift you? As long as we are there, let us. What I'm trying to say is, this kind of effort is there, and it's a pseudo tranquility for a certain time. That's what Baba is trying to explain, or rather the editor is saying this way, Don Stephen, that it keeps on imbalancing all the time. You make an effort, you feel that yes, it's working very well, let it be anything, but then something changes, and then again you are back to square one, and then we tell ourselves, why should I even try? Because I have tried so many times. That's what Baba is saying here. The individual then often asks himself, why should you continue to try, as he never seems to find a lasting solution to his problems? So in other words, it is the samskara. What I understand in my limited understanding is that we have to understand our samskaras or tendencies or habit patterns or something that we are accustomed to doing all the time, and self-reflect, my understanding, whether this particular thought, feeling, emotion or action, whether it is serving me, whether it is helpful to me, or it is of disservice to me. And if it is of disservice to me, then I talk to myself, talk to my own samskaras and mind, telling, why would I encourage you? Because it is not serving me. I have been doing this in the hope that you will go away, but you are not going away. So now so in other words, you have to go, I understand, my understanding, to the root of the problem and not superfluously do anything. When you do something superfluously, it keeps on recurring. And when it keeps on recurring, it means we have not gone to the core of the issue or core of the problem. Yeah. Mike. No, I'll tell you why. No, it's okay. It's okay. Because people on the live. Yeah, go ahead.
Jai Baba. Just for my better understanding on this, you gave a very relevant example of anger. Like, me as an individual, I've been working on it, and there are a lot of times I fail and then I keep trying. So what is the limit? As you said, there is no limit to it, but keep trying, and then you reach a point where you almost give up, and again he pulls you back and then you give up. But how to continue it? Basically, if any habit for that person, which is not beneficial for
Maybe
you.
we can talk one-on-one that way in great details that will come. But okay. there's a definition of an idiot. I'm not telling you that. The definition of an idiot is the one who keeps who keeps doing the same thing over and over again and expects a different result. So the very fact that you have been trying, but it has not, that means you have to try something else. You have to try in some other manner, in some other way, that we can talk, because we need to probe deep into it. Because in discourses, Baba says that anger is nothing but when your desires are blocked. So the root culprit is the desire. You see, that you want a certain thing to happen in a certain way because that is the right way to do or happen. And it doesn't happen that way. Somebody behaves in a certain manner, something happens in a certain manner, and you see this is not the right way. But in reality, there is no right way, there is no wrong way, there is no the way. It is just that somebody is not difficult, but somebody is different. And that somebody is different because somebody is wired differently, which means somebody's samskaric mold is such that the person cannot but be that. And once we accept that, you know, not that we will, once we accept it, it becomes easy for us to then modulate yourself as well as the other person. But the problem is we don't accept. We say that this was difficult, that person is difficult, it's very difficult to handle and all that. But we don't say that he is different and she is different. We are all wired differently. Anyway, I can give an example. The example is, let's say, electricity. Electricity is the power, right? But the same electricity goes in the fan and gives us hawa, it goes in the light and gives us light, goes in the microwave and cooks food for us, goes in the television and shows us a beautiful movie or whatever it is. Electricity is the same. The swarup, roop, swa, I, self, is the same in every individual. But the swabhav is different. The swabhav is the manifestation based on the wiring behind the person. So I cannot expect microwave to show me a good movie. It's impossible. The swabhav of microwave is to cook, or the swabhav of the TV is to show me a film. I cannot. So in other words, we all are in essence, in the core, in the kernel, the same. Swarup, everybody is the same. But the swabhav is different because of the wiring of the samskaras. And because the equipment is wired in such a way, it cannot but do only that function. And so each one of us have got this different swabhav because of our own past karma. And it is very, I would say, almost impossible to change unless somebody really works at the core level, not at the superfluous level. Go deep down, whatever you call it meditation, you call it concentration, you call it hypnosis, whatever you call it. You go deep down and find out as to why is it that I am behaving in such a manner. Does it really call for such a outburst or something? And you say no, then we need to work on ourselves rather than changing the wiring of the other. That is one way of looking at it, but we can go deeper. All right, so have I read it? No. Which one? The first journey. Oh, I'm sorry. Where am I? No, I am not reading this. This is done. Okay. I won't read the asterisk part because that we have done. Yeah. In realization, there is an entire disappearance or cancellation of the sanskaras such as would occur in a tug of war when the opposite parties finish the game and stop pulling. That we have done. So then when some new or outside factor upsets this equilibrium, reactions occur which show that the situation had been quiet not because of lack of propelling forces, but rather because they had temporarily cancelled one another. Temporarily you have changed location, you have changed places, mother-in-law has gone home, now you are alone with your wife, or whatever it is, then the change situation, but that is temporary. The moment she comes back again, it will be upset, that way.
With the annulment of the sanskaras, the individual is freed permanently from all sanskaric determination. As a consequence, for the first time, the individual's life can express itself without latent or patent inhibitions, for it functions in the limitless understanding of truth.
Okay. With the annulment of the samskaras, that means completely it is annulled, so there is no question. The individual is freed permanently from the samskaric determination. Samskaric determination means the determined by samskaras, what actions you do. As a consequence, for the first time, the individual's life can express itself without latent or patent, obviously, or latent means not unmanifest, inhibitions, for it functions in the limitless understanding of the truth. So in other words, when all samskaras are cancelled, then that is where you experience aham brahmasmi, analhak, soham, God realization, self-realization.
Patent means obvious.
Patent is obvious.
This true...
Manifest or evident, yeah, obvious. Sorry, sir?
Take a break.
I don't mind. Yeah, okay.
With the annulment of the sanskaras, the individual is freed permanently from all sanskaric determination.
That is done. Patent, latent patent is done.
Yeah.
This true
poise of realization, which admits to no further possibility possibility of disturbance through resurrection of any limiting tendencies, can only be attained while the individual has a physical body. It can never come through the speeding up processes of one-sided sanskaric exhaustion that take place in the hell state or heaven state. This is the all-important reason why every individual has to come back to the gross world again and again in physical incarnation until self-realization is attained.
This true poise of realization. In realization, there is true poise, not pseudo poise, which admits no further possibility of disturbance through resurrection of any limiting tendencies, because they are all dead and gone, finished, can only be attained while the individual has a physical body. In other words, God realization or self-realization is to be achieved only when we are incarnate and not discarnate. In discarnate, we can achieve liberation, that Najat Mukti or ordinary Mukti. But when we talk about God realization, the person has to be in the human form, even if it is for a few seconds. The realization, you require the body. It can never come through the speeding up process of one-sided sanskaric exhaustion that takes place in the hell state or the heaven state. The hell and the heaven state are the states of mind where there is acute suffering or acute joy and happiness, either or. It cannot be both. It cannot be that if I have got, say, 100 units of happiness means heaven and 75, or, so first I use the heaven state and then, no. It is only one-sided experience. Either you experience heaven or you experience hell, and in the process of experiencing, the samskaric sort of utilization is very sped up. It is speeding because there is no buffer, there is no body. It speeds up very fast. So here Baba says, it can never come through the speeding up processes of one-sided sanskaric exhaustion that takes place in the hell state or heaven state. You either experience hell or you experience heaven. In the experiencing of heaven, you are utilizing very fast all your good karmas and samskaras. In experiencing hell, again, the same way, the bad samskaras. This is the all-important reason why every individual has to come back to the gross world again and again in physical incarnation until self-realization is attained. That is the reason why the body is given.
The alternating links of the continuous chain of individual existence consist of incarnate and discarnate lives forged from periods of birth to death and death to birth. Only in God realization can life be freed from the shackles of limited individuality. Only in God realization does the tenacious chain of recurrent incarnations reach final fulfillment and termination. It is a state of eternal existence free from birth or death. It is true immortality or deathlessness by virtue of the fact that it is above the birth and death of the body.
The alternating links of the continuous chains of individual existence consist of incarnate and discarnate life. Now we are incarnate. When we drop this body, we become discarnate. When we are discarnate, we experience the acute mental state of heaven or hell. Once it is coming to a near balance, again we incarnate, and this keeps on alternating. Incarnate, disincarnate, forged from periods of birth to death and death to birth. Only in God realization can life be freed from the shackles of limited individuality. Here, the individuality or the false ego gets transmuted into the real ego, and the individuality remains, but it becomes infinite individuality or divine individuality. The drop, which considered itself as separate or other than the ocean because of the existence of bubble, and when the bubble bursts, the drop experiences itself as the ocean. Not as a part of the ocean, but as the ocean. Because the ocean is not only infinite, is not only eternal, but is also indivisible, cannot be divided. And so the experience of the drop is, I am the ocean. But that experience is only to that particular drop which had attained false individuality and have now become infinite or unlimited. So that is what Baba explains in terms of what Baba says. It is a state of eternal existence. Always was, is, and ever will remain. That is the meaning of eternality. Free from birth and death. There is no physical birth and death. It is true immortality or deathlessness by virtue of the fact that it is above the birth and death of the body. That soul never incarnates, never gets the experience of body.
True immortality is not the survival of the limited individual in the period following the death of the physical body. It is true that the ego mind persists unscathed through death, but the individual cannot and does not thereupon attain to final freedom from birth and death. Survival should not be confused with deathlessness, which is true immortality. The chain of alternating incarnate and discarnate life is only a survival of consciousness plus ignorance, and ignorance makes true life impossible.
So what is true immortality? True immortality is not the survival of the limited individual in the period following the death of the physical body. When there is a death of the physical body, the individuality remains, the ignorance remains, the samskaras remains. You see, it doesn't go away. So that is not what is the meaning of true individuality, true immortality, because you can't say, okay, I have died, but I exist and therefore I am immortal. No, true immortality is when that experience of finiteness, of limitedness, of separateness, of mind is got over with. That is the real immortality. It is true that the ego mind persists unscathed. That means, in other words, intact. It remains intact. Through the death, the soul is never touched. Everything that is experienced is always experienced by the mind through the consciousness. The consciousness of the soul experiences. The soul remains untouched, unaffected. Nothing happens to the soul. It is the false identification of all of us with the body, with the mind, and therefore we think that, oh, I am suffering. The soul never ever suffers. Nothing happens to the soul. But the individual cannot and does not thereupon attain to final freedom from birth and death. Survival should not be confused with deathlessness. I am surviving, even after death I am surviving. But that should not be confused with deathlessness, which is true immortality. The chain of alternating incarnate and discarnate life is only a survival of consciousness plus ignorance, and ignorance makes true life impossible as long as ignorance is there. In other words, as long as mind is there. In other words, as long as separation is there. In other words, as long as the finite, separative, false ego is there cannot be true immortality. So ego, in our very first chapter of God Speaks, we said that ego is the real thing. Ego is existence. Ego is astitva. Without ego, nothing can exist. It exists, but it changes its form. Originally, it was the original ego, in the beyond state of God, where state 1, which is also called Paratpar Parbrahma state, where God is, but consciousness is not. And all that Jamela, Baba says, all that lafra that he did is in order to gain consciousness. And therefore, in order to know the answer to the very first question, who am I, as the I am God state, the consciousness has to go through all that it is not in order to identify that I am this. Falsity. In other words, all the falsity. In other words, you cannot know the light as light unless you have experienced darkness. You cannot know freedom as freedom unless you have experienced bondage. So all that was opposite of the infinity of God, we have to go through it and then neti, just slice it out. Not this, not that. I am not this, I am not that. Till you finally what remains is I am God. So here what Baba is saying, the chain of alternating incarnate and discarnate life is only a survival of consciousness plus ignorance. We are all consciousness plus ignorance. The moment ignorance goes, mind goes, separating this thing goes, finiteness goes, limitation goes, and what remains is I am God. So in other words, true spirituality is not an amassing or a gathering of something from outside. It is an unfoldment from within. What I am not, I have to give up. Then what I am will automatically manifest itself. There's a question here.
Jai Baba. So talking about sanskaras and ego in this way, then do we have to go through it, or whatever we are going through it is for a reason that we eventually then will attain that stage that we all desire to be, right?
There are two ways of so-called annihilating samskaras. One is that you experience that. So it's a wound-up clock, and when you are experiencing, it is unwinding, it is ringing, and it is over with. But it never happens like that, because in the process of experiencing our past samskaras, we are gathering fresh samskaras. So it's an unending game. There's a way out, but we won't go into that in detail, because that's another chapter altogether. How to do it in a manner that, in short, in one sentence, where the agent of action is other than the self, you do not amass further samskaras. In other words, when you have, Baba uses the word, when you have created a provisional ego, which is subservient to that of the master, which means that you consciously, honestly, sincerely feel it is not you who is doing, it is Baba who is doing through you, honestly and sincerely, then although you are doing, and the battery is being expended or spent, the battery is being discharged, but you are not recharging, you are not putting it in the plug again, because you are not the doer. So in other words, when the agent of action is other than the self, then you don't recharge your battery.
So even if then I'm hurting someone in that process, and it might be termed as ego, like how you said, and if it's happening in a way where I don't mean it, is what you like.
No, take Baba's name. No,
Baba says,
take Baba as your constant companion, and also feel that I am not doing, Baba is doing.
And Baba has gone to a point where even if you are doing something wrong, consciously and knowingly, think and feel that it is Baba who is doing through you. It's a difficult thing. In other words, you should not be affected.
So constant remembrance.
Constant remembrance is the
trying to
constant wholehearted remembrance. That is the name of the game.
Like Baba said, have a net, like a net. if you have a net of him around, then no matter what, the mosquitoes will buzz, but will not bite you. Bite you means put in action.
That is in a different context.
No, but in a different context.
In a different context.
But
here, even if it
Baba's
bites you,
name.
it is not biting you, it is biting Baba.
So this is
So
a
you are not
fast track way of probably eliminating the sanskaras if you're constantly thinking of Baba is doing
all
it
the
through
time
me.
if you
Yes,
think,
yes.
Baba, you are doing, Baba, it's you, it's you.
Genuinely. And what is the proof that you are genuinely inviting Baba and Baba is doing? That you remain unaffected and detached with the results. You are not affected.
Right.
Because
right.
you are not the doer. If something great happens, no. If something, wrong happens and you are jailed or something, I'm nothing, Baba did it. If that much of in-depth conviction is there that it is Baba is doing it, then perhaps yes, you are only one-sided traffic. That means your samskaras are being spent and you are not gathering. Adding more.
Because when we are acting out the previous sanskara, we are also adding.
It's always ongoing process.
So to stop it, the only way Baba has suggested is to
the shortest
act subservient. Our ego should be
way.
subservient to him.
Okay.
You are doing it. You are the one.
You have a question.
Jai Baba. So, in other words, is it in a commoner's language to say, don't use your head?
No, use your brain.
You don't, as in, because when you're thinking,
no, you are
then
not thinking.
you're judging
Baba
your
is
action.
Thinking. You are not thinking.
I'm not thinking. So I'm saying, don't think.
Yeah.
Don't. What I mean by don't use my head.
If it is coming, it is not me but Baba. You.
Yeah. So can it be said like, don't apply my brain and don't.
In fact, you have to apply greater mind, apply greater heart, but in the firm belief that you are not the doer. When you read discourses, it's a very profound, doable, do-it-yourself DIY kit where Baba says, that this is one way of getting rid of your samskaras and not accumulating fresh samskaras by honestly and sincerely and genuinely feeling that you are not the doer, that the doer is the master himself. That way.
But surrender to the moment.
Yes.
No, what do we surrender?
Surrender means what? Under.
Surrender. I love that.
Surrender.
And you don't
Surrender.
So
you
let
don't
him click
claim
around,
for
let him do.
the
Then
outcome.
there should be no complaint. There should be no reaction. There should be no nothing because you are not affected. It is Baba who is doing everything and Baba is affected. It's a very high. But if we are able to do that, then yes. Yeah.
Jai Baba.
Jai Baba.
Cyrus uncle, but then what tends to happen is that, not that I'm saying I will be the one to do this, but I'm saying for general understanding, if we always think about Baba in this way and the fact that, this is Baba is the doer, then I don't know how many times we'll be able to, we'll just continue doing this thinking that, oh, Baba is the doer.
Correct.
It becomes like that in your head.
Expected to do
Yeah,
that.
and you're not staking claim to anything.
You are neither taking the praise nor taking the blame. You need to really introspect, go within yourself and finalize that contract between you and the you. The real you and the false you.
Right.
And then you can do it. It's doable. What I'm trying to say is it is doable.
We learn.
Once somebody asked a similar question of Erach. We all know Erach. How can I say that I am not doing it and Baba is doing it, I am doing it? How can you say like that? Then it is hypocrisy. It is wrong, it is false.
Yeah, that's exactly what I meant.
That's exactly what I'm saying. It's hypocrisy. And Erach said that the fact of the matter is that it is only, there is no one but Baba. And then the thought that you are doing it is a hypocrisy. You getting what I'm saying? So that much of depth he had to say. He said that you think that you are doing it. Actually it is Baba. Factually it is Baba and Baba and Baba. Everything. There is nothing besides Baba. Factually. But because we are so much ingrained in ignorance, in the ego, false ego, that you think that you are doing good or you are doing bad. It is only him doing it. So this is hypocrisy that you are thinking you are doing it. I found that one answer very profound. Yeah. Thank you, Baba. All right. Life. We are coming to the last paragraph of this.
Life in ignorance is the very negation of existence in truth. It is so basic a curtailment of true existence that when judged by the standards of the true existence in eternity, it had best be termed a continuous death. Only in realization is consciousness emancipated from the tyranny of this continuous death, which nullifies the true life in eternity. And only in liberation can consciousness arrive at that true immortality which lies beyond all curtailment and obscurity.
More or less, this goes in tune with what we just talked about, Eraj saying, that he said, Baba says here, life in ignorance, what we are living, is the very negation of existence in truth. So in truth, we don't exist. In truth, only Baba is existing. But because we are in life in ignorance, we think I, you, and I, and all that. It is so basic a curtailment of the true existence that when judged by the standards of the true existence in eternity, it had best be termed a continuous death. So we are all in that sense, continuously dead in the sense. We are not living in the truth, in eternity. Only in realization, God realization, is consciousness emancipated, freed from the bondage, from the tyranny. Tyranny would mean autocracy, of this continuous death, which nullifies the true life in eternity. So this continuous death is nullifying the true life in eternity. And only in liberation can consciousness arrive at that true immortality which lies beyond all curtailment, beyond all limitations and obscurity, uncertainty and all that. So right now it's like how we are uncertain. How can you say that Baba is doing it when I am doing it? So only in realization we will realize. It's like only at the end of the journey we will realize that there was no journey. You've seen that movie 20 Saal Baad, which starts from the end. It's like, only in the end. So in other words, all this game plan of bondage, no. Only now, okay, so there we end this. The game plan is, according to me, we have all been given this physical form as an opportunity, a very great opportunity, in my limited understanding, to make this form the last form. It's possible. It's doable. It's not something hi-fi. Because Baba himself said, in my wish, the last point, I say with my divine authority to each and all that whosoever takes my name at the time of breathing his last comes to me. So do not forget to remember me in your last moments. Unless you start remembering me from now on, it will be difficult to remember when your end approaches. You should start practicing from now on. Even if you take my name only once every day, you will not forget to remember me in your dying moments. This is the last. Now this is like, according to me, a guaranteed signed paper where Baba says, if you take my name, anybody, and my name doesn't mean just Meher Baba, it can be any past advent, Jesus, Buddha, Rama, Krishna, whosoever, or a perfect master. And Baba's guarantee is that you will come to me. When Baba was asked, what does it mean, come to me? It means that particular soul will experience infinite bliss eternally. Then Baba goes on to explain, there is no further birth and death for that particular soul. Then Baba still further explains, it is not a state of perfection. That means in perfection, which is God realization, you experience infinite knowledge, infinite power, infinite bliss. This is union with the beloved in only bliss. You don't experience the knowledge and the power because this Najat Mukti or ordinary Mukti is to be had, can be given by the Lord even 3 to 5 days after the body is dropped. when you experience only infinite bliss. No power, no knowledge. We don't need power and knowledge, because for such a soul, creation does not exist. Even those who are God realized, even those who are perfect masters, when they drop their body, they only experience union, oneness. They do not use the power and the knowledge, because power and knowledge is based on being used in the life of ignorance, in the life of creation. Bliss is our own property. Power and knowledge we use when we are encountering somebody in illusion, which is this Jagat. So even they experience only infinite bliss. So we have a very good chance of experiencing infinite bliss if we remember to remember Him when the last breath is going on. Any questions? Yes, please.
Cyrus uncle, in such cases, what is the point of it all, in the sense that we have relationships, we marry, we have parents? If this is going to be a total zero at the end, why do we even...
Because unless and until you know what is the value of zero, you won't value one.
Yeah.
You have to value one. That is oneness of all in life, oneness of all in creation. There is only one. God is one means not numeral 1, 2, 3, 4. But God is so uncompromisingly all-encompassing one that there is no other. And that is the experience which we are supposed to gain at the so-called end of the journey, which is actually not a journey at all. Because only when we reach that stage, we'll realize that it was just a dream. Now every day we go to sleep and we dream. We go here, we travel in the train, travel by flight, When we wake up, where is all that? Nothing. So when we genuinely, really wake up in the real awake state, at that time, perhaps, we will realize that there is no such thing as creation. It was all a dream, there was nothing. So you please get married, please have children, please and enjoy that. And
it is our sanskaras which propel us to all those, activities.
We need to go through
and even a coming
the
again.
ignorance,
some desire
the so-called
keeps us hooked to coming in. That is why Baba wants us to take his name, because he is the desireless one. So when we take his name, there is no desire.
Any
so
more
we can't
questions?
come back.
No more questions, so we are all dead now.
In the truest sense.
Last chapter. So we are all 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Destined for real death. Wow. And I want to thank Naman sincerely for being always there to record and, help us. Because if he is not there, then we are all dead. That way. All right. Thank you, Baba. Thanks to all of you.
Baba.
Avatar Meher Baba ki Jai. Jai.